Welcome to Healthy Cells, Healthy You. I'm your host, Janet Walker. I've been working in the healthcare community for 30 years, and for 16 of those years, I've been a writer and producer for the award-winning national PBS health information programs, American Health Journal, and Innovations in Medicine. We've interviewed thousands of doctors, scientists, and researchers on every topic related to health, medicine, and medical technology. You can watch current episodes of Innovations in Medicine on your local PBS channel, or you can stream our programs on the American Health Journal channel, the Better Health channel, and TV Healthy Kids. This podcast is sponsored by the good folks at Life Farm Incorporated, a company whose innovative cellular repair products are backed by extensive science, research, and clinical studies. Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Iguria, Greece, and Loma Linda, California. What do these 5 seemingly different places have in common? They're all blue zones, places where people live exceptionally long lives. They have higher concentrations of people that live to be 100 than anywhere else in the world. What's their secret? In today's episode, I'll be talking to Dr. Felicia Stoler. Dr. Stoler is one of the most sought-after nutrition and fitness experts for TV, radio, newspapers, online, and magazines in the U.S. She'll tell us all about blue zones and explain the pillars of lifestyle medicine. Wouldn't we all love to reach a healthy 100? Now to introduce our special guest. Dr. Felicia Stoler earned her Master of Science degree in Applied Physiology and Nutrition from Columbia University and her Doctorate in Clinical Nutrition from Rutgers School of Health Professions. She is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, exercise physiologist, and expert consultant in wellness and healthy living. She is board certified in lifestyle medicine with her own private practice in New Jersey and is a college professor and public speaker. Dr. Stoler was the host of TV's groundbreaking program, Honey, We're Killing the Kids, and is the author of Living Skinny and Fat Genes, The Healthy Way to Lose Weight and Feel Great. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Stoler.
Thank you for having me.
So we've got some really current topics to discuss that are so important to healthy living and cellular repair. Okay, we ready?
I am all ready.
Let's go. First, let's talk about the pillars of lifestyle medicine for good health and well-being. The first one being food. Can you tell us a little bit about the pillars?
Sure. Well, I'm excited that lifestyle medicine is a relatively, I don't want to say a new science. It's really a group of people finally got together and realized they should blend everything together and not just look at medicine in separate lanes, to really look at how everything comes together as like a big highway. So if you think about, we could talk about pillars, being like the structure, the foundation that like hold up a building, which is our body. The pillars of lifestyle medicine are food, physical activity, mental health, emotional health and well-being, stress, sleep, and a feeling of importance, or a feeling, they call it conviviality, like having a purpose, feeling like a part of a community. And those also sort of came together by way of the blue zones, which was done as a project. People, you can call it the blue zones, you could talk about it or state it as longevity regions of the world, but it really started off as Dan Buettner doing a story for National Geographic, where he went around the world on an assignment to see where people lived to be 100 or more. And obviously National Geographic had beautiful photographs, but beyond that, it was, what do these people have in common that they live so long? And that's where, lifestyle medicine sort of came to play, because they looked at all of these things and what they had in common. And so, the nutrition part, I know you want to talk about that, is people eat predominantly plant-based. That's the foundation of their diet. And I just got back from being at a natural products food and product show. And it's funny how people now take plant-based and they assume that means vegan. And I'm like, I keep saying to people, no, don't say that. Like, we've been working so hard to get people to understand what plant-based means. Don't start confusing it and don't change the definition of it. I liked it. We all liked it the way it was. And there were a number of dietitians there. We all were laughing about that. So eating food close to the way it's found in nature is important. And again, eating plants. So fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, right? So that's what we mean by plant-based.
So you said that plant-based was not necessarily vegan.
Yes.
How would you describe plant-based then?
Well, plant-based is, if you want to really know that, the real truth is that plant-based is really a bit of an extension of the flexitarian diet, which my friend Dawn Jackson Blattner wrote the book on that, I don't know how many years ago, but it has been consistently in U.S. News and World Reports, like either top 5 or top 10 of best diets, because it really talks about eating plant-based. I mean, she really started talking about it, meaning that you can eat small amounts of animal-sourced protein and eat larger amounts of plants. So it's not being so rigid in your beliefs or your mindset about food or in your practices, but about being open to, you can be healthy and still eat beef. You can be healthy and eat chicken. The truth is, like, even for the planet, I mean, when you think about plant-based and mind you, I'm trained as a journalist just like you are, people that are on the plant protein side, they only want to show you the data on plant protein and why they think it's good. And then, the people on the animal protein side, they want to show you their data too. So, we have to be able to, not only look at our bias, but really look at all the facts all together. And, the fact is, people are still going to eat animal foods, whether, everybody's not going vegan anytime soon. And the truth is also, when you look at humans have evolved, humans ate animals, like other animals,
right.
Eat animals, human have eaten plants. That's part of the whole ecosystem. Look at animals eat other animals. So we're not the only ones that do that. And so, how much we eat is different. Whether or not animals are the only cause of greenhouse gases. Really one of the biggest causes of greenhouse gases is food waste. So we could talk about, like all the garbage and the stuff that people throw out that they don't, use or eat, or it spoils and it goes in a garbage dump. Those are important. Think about the carbon inputs that goes into creating all these, what I call like faux proteins. They're not really fake, but they're just, you're taking pea protein, soy protein, other proteins that come from plants and trying to put it into some kind of a mash and then create it into something that resembles the texture, taste, and it's never equaled the same nutrition profile as other meats. We were wondering, does somebody who's a vegan really want to eat like a fake hamburger that tastes like beef if they don't like beef? I don't know. I don't know. If you didn't like it, then I don't know why you would eat it. I love the taste of vegetables and I prefer to eat them in their natural form or as close to the way they're found in nature.
One thing that surprised me when I was looking at the Pillars of Lifestyle Medicine was that you've got components of healthy relationships, reducing stress, getting sleep, and things that aren't related to food at all.
I know,
so how do healthy relationships coordinate with food and what we're putting into our bodies? Like, where's the
you think about
connection?
The whole mind-body wellness component, right? And look, there's a lot of research that's been done and continues to be done on the gut-brain, relationship in terms of health and mental health. If you think about it, our stomach is the first line of defense for our immune system. But more importantly, COVID has shown us that isolation is really detrimental to a lot of people's physical health, their emotion. When your emotional health isn't good, your physical health is bad. If you look up symptoms of depression, among the symptoms of depression are sleeplessness, are physical aches and pains. I have people around me that struggle with mental health issues. And certainly as a clinician, a lot of people that have disordered eating or exercise or body dysmorphia have other mental health issues. So I'm acutely aware of some of the other effects that mental health has on your physical health. So that's why that is really important. If you think about our jail system and punishment, what is the other than death, the other ultimate punishment is solitary confinement. Think about that. They use that as a means of punishing people. And it is so traumatic to the human. Now that I'm even saying it out loud, I think it's almost like unethical. If you think about that for a moment, like you're basically like inflicting some other form of harm, even though it's not physical directly, it indirectly can create some physical harm for an individual. So that's where we found these things to be important. So think like we all know people, or we've seen pictures where people live in multi-generational residences, meaning somebody might have a grandparent that lives in the house, and it's not just for them to be there so the younger generation can take care of them. It's so they can have a purpose also. So sometimes they help with doing chores around the house, not to be a maid, but because it gives them a sense of purpose, or watching children, or gardening, for the home. I mean, these are things that people enjoy doing. And it's important for them not to be isolated. Very early in my career, I had done a lot of work with seniors, and congregate meal programs are really important, because what happens is when people isolate, they eat less. Their nutrition goes down. It's lonely eating by yourself. Some people can't handle being alone. And, even in a lot of, I guess they're assisted living facilities, what happens is somebody might have their own independent apartment, but then a lot of times they'll go down for lunch or dinner for a communal meal, because there is a value in community. There is a value in being around other people. And for so long, we've only looked at health as far as physical health, numbers, diagnoses. We haven't looked at how all these other factors play into somebody's, risk for disease, or if somebody's going to have a disease that comes on as a result of, the lack of these important pillars.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Anyway, if I could just add one more thing about sleep, because I think that that's really important. I know we started off talking about that offline, but what is interesting about sleep is you think about things like sleep apnea, which, is been diagnosed more in the last 20 years and been acknowledged and discussed and really researched. People that don't sleep well, what happens is when we sleep, our bodies have the opportunity to recharge, repair, and renew. Right? You talk about cellular renewal with this.
Right.
So this is so key, right? Like, when is your body really resting? It's when you're sleeping. It's the ultimate form of rest. In fact, you burn the most calories from fat when you're sleeping. That's why I think more people don't get it. Like, you really need to sleep more. You'd burn more fat, especially as you age, which is kind of weird, because especially women in menopause complain about not sleeping well and gaining weight. And so if you think about it, having a really good, solid, sound sleep is important. And so one of my friends is a sleep disorder expert. She's a pulmonologist. And we talked about, like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg with regards to sleep. Is it that people that don't get enough sleep become overweight and then it exacerbates their other health problems? Or is it that, there are other health problems creates a situation where they don't sleep well? So
it seems like, especially today, you're trying to balance work and family and all of your other activities. And the first thing that you compromise on is your sleep, and you shorten your sleep time.
Right. Think about even doctors' trainings, when doctors used to be on call for like 24 hours, like, we know that that's not good. Why? Or, 12 hours is really a stretch. But think about that. Pilots aren't allowed to work that long. Why do we let doctors work that long? They're trying to save our lives,
That's a good point. Very good point. Listen up, doctors. Get your sleep. Let's talk a little more about those blue zones, because, I had never heard about that before. And you were telling me that you were at one of the first conferences where these blue zones were being discussed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the American College of Lifestyle Medicine was talking about that. They've really embraced and partnered with the blue zones, which is a business that Dan Buettner sort of formed after he did this fantastic and groundbreaking, article. And now there's research going on. It just really made people sort of pause and go, ooh, wow, let's delve a little bit further. How something that seemed more like entertainment science or social science really gave a lot of people a reason to look further and really determine what is so unique and special about these places.
Have you visited any of the blue zones?
No. No, I'd like to. I mean, that would be like a great tour,
It was funny. I was looking at the list of places that are blue zones, and I was so surprised to see that Loma Linda, California was one.
Do you understand why that is?
Yes, I know that in Loma Linda, California, where Loma Linda University is, there's a high concentration of Seventh-day Adventists, and they practice a garden-based diet and very healthy living, no alcohol, and community, church is very present in their lives. I've done a lot of humanitarian work with the Seventh-day Adventist mission in Fiji, and it was like, that makes sense.
And this has been going on for multiple generations, so if you think about that preservation of a belief system and making a choice, right? Like, it's not so much that they live in Loma Linda, it's that there's a very large cluster of Seventh-day Adventists that live there and continue to live there, and they just keep staying within that community. So, you could look at Ikaria, Greece, and you could say, all right, well, is it just Ikaria, or are there other places in Greece that are, considered blue zones, right? So there are, is it Greece as a country? Is it Italy as a country? Is it Japan as a country? Is it Costa Rica as a country, or very specific places? So when they did that, they were looking at specific places. But, really, again, when you bring that all back together full circle and look at what they have in common. In fact, since you mentioned Loma Linda, Seventh-day Adventists are the outliers in that they don't believe in any alcohol consumption,
right,
or smoking. And in Europe, they smoke and they drink. And the same thing, I think, in Japan, too. So, and I don't know about Costa Rica, they don't necessarily, or other places in Latin America, they don't exclude that. So it's interesting to see what everybody has in common and then what some of those, other outliers are.
Let's talk a little bit about intermittent fasting, because this is another hot topic. Everybody's talking about it. Even at my last physical, my doctor said, you should try intermittent fasting. So explain what it is.
Doctor really said that to you? I'm very impressed.
So now I guess these things are working their way into the medical community, which is a good thing.
I think it's wonderful, and that's nice that the universe, put your doctor there. You're lucky that you have a forward-thinking doctor. I'm the one who goes to my doctor and tells them what they should be telling their patients. Oh, we always laugh. She's like, I always love when you come in here once a year because I learned so much from our appointment. So intermittent fasting. So intermittent means like you're changing it up, right? It's not consistent. So let's start with the word. So intermittent fasting actually is an umbrella term for a number of different fasting modalities. And let's just start with the word fast and what that means. So fasting is when you are not consuming anything, technically. It's no food, no beverages. When we go to sleep at night, the word breakfast means to break your fast. So we've evolved from humans that spent their daylight hours, like we're talking thousands of years ago. They were out looking for food. They were foraging and looking for food. Maybe they caught a fish. Maybe they, killed an animal, whatever. They ate nuts, they ate seeds. And then when the sun went down, they went to sleep. So what happened? Fire. People figured out how to make fire, harness fire. Then they cooked things. That was a game changer. And not only did they get to cook things, but it created more light. So they could do more during the light of day, or what they perceived, maybe not the light of day. They were able to do more when there was light around, right? Than when it's pitch black and dark. Or when there's not a full moon out, right? If there's a full moon out, that's that changes things. But fire was really a big, and I know a number of years ago, somebody wrote a book on that, about how fire changed the way we eat, and so much of our lifestyles. But so you think about that, like, okay, well, there's that. There are religions, right? So people in Judaism, in Christianity, the major religions, even in Islam, they integrate fasting. And I believe potentially in Hindu and some other religions, fasting is part of a cleansing process for the soul, where you're restricting eating for different, reasons. So, with the invention of fire and then electricity, we have pushed the amount of light hours we potentially have in our lives, where we've opened up this window of opportunity for eating. So, there are different types of fasts. You could do a 24-hour fast where you eat nothing at all. You could do it where it's just a water fast. You can do a fast where they have like the 5-2, where 5 days you eat whatever you want. And 2 days, you either eat limited calories or you eat no calories. I know some people do a 1 day a week full on fast and they only drink water. I do something called time restricted eating or time restricted feeding, where you eat within a finite number of hours a day, and you don't necessarily have to be restrictive in what you eat. But it's funny, I do know people that, might eat in this limited window, and I wouldn't necessarily agree with all the foods they do. I think like binge eating in a finite amount of time isn't healthy for lots of reasons either. But, and there are people that do it to the extreme. I would say what the research shows is safe is to keep that eating within 8 to 10 hours. Anything less than that does sort of trigger some stressors in the body, which may not necessarily be helpful. But the reason why, there's a few reasons why. And then there's something called a fasting mimicking diet protocol that Dr. Walter Longo created. And a company was formed as a result of that called El Nutra. And they do a fasting mimicking diet, which was actually originally created to help people going through cancer treatments. So the reason to do fasting for various reasons is one, to potentially eat less and consume less calories throughout the day. The other is to give your body sort of a rest, or your digestive tract a rest, and all your organs a rest from, having to produce enzymes and hormones to deal with that. The other reason to do that is something called autophagy. So autophagy is this process that was discovered where the body will, in a stressed state, and I mean a physiologically stressed, biologically stressed, state, not like mental stress. It's like calorie restriction. In a stressed state, people will knock out underperforming cells to allow for the development and growth of stem cells and regeneration of stem cells. And if you think about it, look at people that have been prisoners of war or people that have been in internment camps throughout different world wars and history. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but you look at a lot of people that, for example, came out of concentration camps after World War II. There were a large number of those people that lived well into their 90s. There is something about the process of restriction. And there are even people that I've seen over the years in my practice that have had disordered eating where I can't believe these people are alive. And I'm not saying it's good, and I'm not encouraging anybody by any means to go develop an eating disorder, but there is something about the process of the telomeres with DNA replication that by creating a physiological stress in the body, it allows the body to protect itself in that it slows down the aging process. So do you remember a number of years ago, there were those people that went into the biosphere? Do you remember there was a biosphere in Arizona?
I've been to the biosphere in Arizona. Yeah.
So the people
absolutely.
that went in there, actually, the person that was in there was a professor of Dr. Longo's, and they did extreme calorie restriction there, and they were eating. I think they were vegan too, but they looked pretty sickly when they got out. But I don't know as far as long-term ROI how all of those people that were in there, what their health and their longevity is, but it is hypothesized that by doing these different fasting modalities that you may indeed extend your life. So that's why I've been doing it. I went to the very first global summit on fasting at University of Southern California almost 3 years ago, and I was really kind of blown away. Like that, just like the blue zones are kind of new topics. I remember when people first started talking about intermittent fasting, maybe even 15 years ago. I remember my brother asking me about it, and I thought it was a bunch of garbage. And I didn't think there was a lot of science around it because at that time there wasn't a lot of science around it. Now there's a lot more science around it. And so there definitely is a value in it. I can tell you, I personally do the time restricted eating, and I also do periodic fasting, the Prolon protocol. I do that once. It's recommended that you do it, I do it quarterly. So I do it every 3 months as sort of like a reset, reboot. And I happen to like it. For me, I'm 55 years old. So obviously my game after 50 was about longevity and living vibrantly and healthy and trying to stave off disease as long as possible and maintaining a quality of life. So, and again, it's all based on science, and I've decided to be my own little N of one experiment.
Nice. So for someone who is told by their doctor, go ahead and try intermittent fasting, or just someone who wants to try it, the restricted eating would be stop eating at 6 p.m. and don't eat until 10 the next morning, 16 hours? Or is what's the formula?
Yeah, sure. Some people don't. I think what you have to start with, I mean, some of the research shows that eating early in the morning and stopping in the evening is a little bit better for certain disease states, but everybody's got a different circadian rhythm. And, you ask a lot of parents, for example, admittedly will recall that they've had a hard time getting their kids to eat breakfast in the morning because they're not hungry. Some people are very hungry when they wake up. I'm not hungry till 12 or 1 o'clock. And I do 2 hours of exercise every morning, and I'm still not hungry until 12 or 1 o'clock. And I've always naturally been that way. So for me personally, that type of time restricted eating works, where I'll stop, let's say I'll eat at 12 or 1 and I'll stop by 8 or 9. And it's not only just eating. You have to remember alcohol counts as calories. So if you go out on a Friday or a Saturday night or whatever night of the week and you want to drink alcohol, that is calories.
And probably not great to drink alcohol on an empty stomach anyway.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, at night, like it's all calories. It's not just the chewing kind. It's the drinking kind too. So we have to really be cognizant of what those calories are. So what I really say to folks is start with a 12-hour window first and see if you could do it. So can you go 8 to 8, right? Or 7 to 7, or whatever that window is for you. And then if that works, great. If you want to shorten that window, fantastic. But I don't recommend doing any less than 8 hours.
When someone is doing intermittent fasting, should they be concerned about vitamins? Should they try to take supplements or vitamins, or just make sure that they're getting the nutrition they need?
I think it's like anything. All you're doing is shortening that window of time that you're consuming calories throughout the day. It's not saying that you have to have restrictive eating. In fact, there are no recommendations as far as eating. I could say, eating predominantly, more flexitarian or plant-based is going to be better. But, in terms of whether or not you need vitamins or minerals, I think that's important to assess your entire diet. I can't tell you how many times I speak to folks, and I'm working with a young man right now who's 25 years old who just can't get it out of his head that he doesn't need the extra protein shake every day, or the protein bar. The protein industry in the last 20 years has done a tremendous job with making people think that they need more protein. And the truth is that protein energy malnutrition has not been a problem in the United States since before the 70s.
Wow.
Think about that for a moment. We don't have inadequate protein intake in this country. I would argue we actually have excessive protein intake in this country. And for a lot of people, they forget that protein has the same amount of calories per gram as carbohydrates. Fat, right? Fat has more.
And those concentrated protein products can be hard on the organs, right?
Incredibly.
They can be hard on the kidneys.
Right. And then think about all the other extra added ingredients that are in there that are just not necessary. When people say, do I need to have a protein shake or a protein bar? I'm like, well, what's your protein intake throughout the day? And, when I went to that fasting summit, just to go back to that for a second, one of my colleagues said to me, she was surprised by how many of the diets were actually lower in protein, that they did the research with. And she said, does that surprise you? I said, no, because I don't know why people are eating so much protein. I mean, higher protein intake until the age of 60 or 65 is correlated with increased rates of cancer. Everybody's worried about getting cancer. The truth is the number one cause of death is heart disease worldwide. So, protein, are people overeating soy or nuts or seeds? No, people are overeating, beef, poultry, fish, pork. Pork, believe it or not, is the number one meat that's consumed globally. Everyone focuses on beef, but worldwide, it's actually, especially in like Asian countries, they consume a lot more pork than they do beef or chicken.
And do you remember that ad campaign for pork? It's the white meat.
It's the other white meat. I know.
It's the other white meat, like it's a healthy alternative.
I eat it. I mean, I eat
I eat it.
everything. I just eat everything in small amounts. That's all.
The last question I wanted to ask about fasting is, are there any dangers in fasting, things that people need to be concerned about when they're fasting? Should they check with their physician before they fast?
Well, I mean, I don't think, everybody always say check with your physician, but if your physician doesn't know anything about it, and let's face it, like you're not going to pay your doctor for an office visit to ask them about whether or not you should do a fast. I think the things to be careful of, to really be aware of, is what kind of fast you're doing and what does that mean? I mean, for example, some people do extreme fasting, which is very dangerous. I mean, anything to an extreme can be dangerous, right? Even among religions that use fasting, and usually they're only using a 24-hour fast for spiritual purposes. They say if you are sick, if you're pregnant, if you're nursing, if you take medications, they tell you not to do that. If you're elderly, if you're frail, if you have a disease, like you're not supposed to do that. So of course, like you have to use some judgment and understand like right from wrong, that you don't want to put yourself in harm's way. So I think that's important.
Are juice and other cleanses part of a good fasting protocol?
I would have to say no. So first of all, let's use that word cleanse for a minute. It invokes this vision of somebody like going in and like scrubbing the inside of your intestinal tract. And our GI tract is fantastic at doing that. In fact, when you look at cellular turnover in the body, the cells of the GI tract turn over like almost every 3 days, whereas like red blood cells turn over every 3 months. So our body does a really good job of cleansing itself. The human body is fascinating if you get into the physiology of how it all works. Juice cleanses, which I see a lot of places offer, are literally just pressed juices, right? Or fruit or vegetables that have been juiced, or, there's extraction. A lot of times the fiber's been removed. You're literally just drinking sugar and water. I mean, I hate using the word sugar in place of carbohydrates, but you're just literally drinking like carbohydrates and water. And that's just not good. I mean, that's an extreme, but that's not beneficial for the body necessarily. You are better off chewing the foods if you want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want, like I literally tell people, make sure you're eating more vegetables. I've looked at thousands of food journals in the last 25 years, thousands. And the one thing that most people, if not all people, but a majority of the people, I'd say 90% of the food journals I've ever looked at are deficient in vegetable consumption and fruit consumption. That is what people don't eat enough of. You could cleanse every day by just eating more fruits and vegetables and chewing them instead of drinking them down. It takes longer, first of all, to chew an apple, right? That might have 40 calories versus drink 8 ounces of juice that might have 120 calories.
That makes sense.
Right?
That makes sense, yeah.
The act of chewing, everything about it, enzymes in your mouth that start breaking down starches and breaking down the food into smaller particles before it goes down your esophagus into your stomach, right? Where it's then, getting made into even smaller particles so that enzymes can become exposed to it to help pull it into through the lining of our GI tract and sends it out to our liver, where it goes first. And then from the liver, it then goes into the bloodstream. So almost everything goes to the liver first for a little like, what are we going to send out here? And I think people don't realize that your liver doesn't know how it came into your mouth.
So that old advice about chewing your food well 20 times, 40 times, whatever, before you swallow it really is good advice.
It is good advice to chew your food well. Exactly. The purpose is to slow down your eating. I even tell people sometimes put your fork down between bites because some people eat so fast. Really chew your food. Something that's become more popular in the last 10 years is mindfulness. People talk about being mindful. It's not just mindful in other things you do. Mindfulness in your food. For example, my boyfriend and I were driving my car back from New Orleans to New Jersey, and we had some chocolate bars in the car. I said, instead of chewing that chocolate, why don't you put a square in your mouth and let it dissolve on your tongue and appreciate the flavor and the texture and see, is it creamy? Is it not creamy? How does it make you feel? Where on your tongue are you experiencing that sensation? That's a very easy part of mindfulness. If it's not chocolate, it's like a cracker. Do you bite a salty, do you bite a cracker and chew it? Have you ever just let it dissolve on your mouth and really appreciate the flavors and what that does? So that's what mindfulness is really about. It's about like being in the moment, experiencing it, savoring it, right? And really like allowing that experience and your senses to experience that food while you're chewing it.
So years ago, I was reading Andrew Weil book, and he said, take a cob of corn and don't slather it with butter and salt. I say
that in my book.
Yeah, just chew it, enjoy the sweetness, enjoy the taste of the corn, get all of that pleasure from what that ear of corn is. And since I read that, that's how I've been eating corn on the cob.
I've been eating it like that since I'm a child because my grandmother yelled at me. I mean, she lived in New York for a long time, but she used to love Jersey corn and she would eat it raw. And I thought it was weird, but like I've eaten it raw too. And she said to me, Felicia, if you keep putting salt and butter on your corn, then all you're really eating is salt and butter. You don't really know what the corn tastes like. And she's so right about that. You think about that urge that people have to just salt food or to just put butter on things. Like a good piece of sourdough tastes really yummy when it's fresh, right? It's good if it's warm too, and I put a little butter on it, but to just always go with butter all the time or go with salt all the time or pepper. Or I know people that put hot sauce on everything. Sometimes you're just not allowing the food and the flavor of that food to come through.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Stoler. We learned so much. Can I ask you to come back and talk to us some more?
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Oh, thanks so much. We'd love to hear about your book, Living Skinny and Fat Genes, The Healthy Way to Lose Weight and Feel Great, as well as learn about 2 other areas of your expertise that are so important, gut health and digestion, and supplements to help those. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please be with us next time when we welcome Dr. Stoler back to the studio. Thanks so much for listening to Healthy Cells, Healthy You, with me, your host, Janet Walker. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe and tell your friends. Together, we'll build healthy cells and a healthy you.